Things continue. The beastmen take Lucille to an alleyway where he uses his healing chant to heal the girl, but the spell somehow fails despite consuming his mana. Bazan asks what Lucille is doing. He apologizes because it's his first time healing someone. Lucille is so nervous that he couldn't picture the spell in his mind. He tries to focus as the girl gets weaker and chants the spell again. He does his best to imagine how a wound heals just like he practiced. The spell finally works and the girl is now cured. He quickly heals 2 more, despite failing to keep his concentration and failing the spell several times. He starts walking toward the last injured, but ends up falling. His mind is slowly falling asleep. After consuming all his mana, he wakes up in his room and the Healers Guild and regrets not being able to save the last one. Bazan still thanked him for saving the rest, but he still blamed himself. He then gets determined to level up as a healer and decides to build experience at the Adventurers Guild, where he can also learn skills to survive in this world. He heads out to the Adventurers Guild and gets impressed by how massive it looks. He approaches the main desk and tells the secretary that he wants to register as an adventurer. He gets fascinated when the secretary turns around, revealing to be a beautiful bunny girl. She welcomes him and tells him to fill out the form indicating his name, race, and age. Then he must channel his blood or magic into a card. He fills it out and she evaluates him. Since Lucille has the martial arts skill, he can register as an adventurer without a problem. She then proceeds to explain how adventurer contracts work. In short, an adventurer fulfills requests and gets compensation for it, but the guild will keep 10% of their compensation to cover operating expenses. Lucille gets curious and asks what will happen if he fails a request. The bunny girl mentions that if he fails, he will be paying a penalty and several other fees. She tells him that he will start out with the lowest adventurer rank, which is H. Lucille gets curious and asks if there are requests for healing. The girl gets surprisingly confused and he then explains that he's a healer. He asks if he can get money by healing injured adventurers and then use that money to pay for his training fees. The girl doesn't understand, but Lucille asks if she can introduce him to someone who can train him to improve his martial arts skill. He tries to make a deal, but she cannot make the final decision and tells him she will be back. He only needs to wait for an answer, but he trusts that his monster luck skill will help him in this situation. The cute bunny girl returns a few minutes later with a big scary dude behind her. Lucille tries to remind his scary boss from his previous life to keep himself calm and introduces himself. He explains to the big guy that he wants to train his fighting and will pay for it by healing the injured. The big guy thinks this is a strange deal for a healer and asks if Lucille doesn't care about money. Lucille is confused, but the big guy asks why a healer like Lucille wants to learn how to fight. Lucille explains that he will be killed by a weak monster if he goes out on a journey, so he wants to be strong and able to protect himself. After thinking for a while, the big guy decides to accept Lucille's healing services in exchange for training. Lucille will be paid 1 silver coin per day for healing people. Then the big guy will deduct his training fees from his wage. Lucille accepts it and tells that he can start the job in 6 days. The big guy tells the bunny secretary named Nana to take care of Lucille from now on. She introduces herself with a big smile, attracting dangerous stares at Lucille from the adventurers around. The big guy quickly makes them disperse and introduces himself as Broad, the guild's chief instructor. He tells Lucille that he will be waiting for him in 6 days and walks away with his evil laugh. Lucille returns to his room and the Healers Guild and thinks about his situation. He realizes that if his magic recovery cannot keep up, adventurers will lose faith in him, so for the next 6 days he will use all his energy to improve. Make sure he won't fail when healing people. Monica then knocks on his door to bring his dinner and congratulates him for finding a new goal. He explains that he still needs to improve his skills before leaving. She motivates him and he asks her which skill level he should aim for with his holy magic affinity. Monica explains that if he reaches level 5 before he turns 20, he will be considered talented. Lucille questions if he can even level up once per year to reach that level. Monica tries her best to motivate him and tells him that if manages to do it, she will go on a date with him. Lucille chokes on his food thinking if she's talking about that kind of date, his eyes get on fire. This was the motivation he needed to work hard. He spends the next 6 days in his room, doing everything he can to improve his magic. On the 6th day he headed down and thanked Kururu for all the help she provided to him. Then thanks to them that he learned about magic and can officially work as a healer. Kururu thinks he's quite impressive not only for learning fast, but also for having found a job. She tries to motivate him and reminds him to thank Lumina for her help if he runs into her. He says his goodbye and heads out to the Adventurers Guild. Upon stepping inside, He feels people staring at him and commenting. He meets another hella cute secretary at the front desk who tries to help him. He thinks all girls in this world are pretty but goes straight to business. He introduces himself and tells he asked Broad to train him. She points him out to the staircase leading to the underground training hall. He follows her instructions and ends up in a huge space. Broad then appears and looks even scarier than before. He mentions that he's glad Lucille didn't back off from the deal and tells that Lucille is the only one training there. Lucille thanks for the opportunity, and Broad reveals he's impressed. He unleashed his killing aura, but Lucille didn't try to run away. Lucille mentions that he needs to learn how to survive, and wants Broad to train him as hard as he can. Broad scares him again, telling Lucille to not run away, but he then tells him to run some laps. Lucille realizes Broad is the type of person who only believes in hard work, and to make it worse, he's criticizing every single movement he does. Lucille thinks this is one of the toxic workplaces like his original world. He continues to run while Broad spits some fact checks, like if he stops running, a monster will kill him. Yet despite the training being harsh and him being bullied, Lucille starts to enjoy this treatment. He remembers being shot and not being able to move in his last moments, so being able to run and move feels like heaven. After some cringe and weird moments, he finally collapses. Broad is impressed to see a newbie pass out during the warm-up. After some rest, they continue. The adventurers were chilling. Nana was taking a nap when they heard a scream. Yep, Broad was sitting on top of Lucille during the stretching exercises. Broad explains stretching can improve his range of motion and his range of attack, plus he can help him dodge the enemies. Lucille realizes his mistake. He thought Broad was going to take the Spartan training approach, but he's taking the training in a practical way. After the intense stretching session, Broad tells Lucille to try to land an attack on him. Lucille tries to land his baby kick, shocking Broad, who can't believe how weak he is. Lucille reveals he is level 1 and that's why he wanted to train. Despite being still shocked, he's impressed that Lucille keeps motivated. Lucille reveals he wants to reach a level where he can face adventurers without wetting his pants. Broad thinks this is a good goal and tells Lucille to come at him with everything, but Lucille's attacks are both weak and slow. Broad easily dodges and slaps his face. Broad motivates him, mentioning that the real fight begins when he's tired. He recommends that Lucille learn how to move, and to do that he needs to visualize his attack to prevent him from getting sloppy. Lucille remembers that he took martial arts classes in his previous life, but he never fought someone. He tries to follow Broad's instructions, imagining before attacking. He realizes that he needs to use his reins to get close and then land the strike. He tries to kick, but gets knocked down when Broad counters. He finds this training almost too much to handle and thinks about quitting, but he gets up, determined to survive in this new fresh start world. Broad is impressed by his determination and smiles. Lucille sets another goal. Someday he will land a hit on Broad. After an intense session, Lucille ends up exhausted on the floor. Broad compliments him for having guts and tells him that the most important thing in battle is not dying or getting injured, and to do that, Lucille first needs to know how to move, plus he can only use these skills in a battle. After this becomes second nature to him. Broad tells him to first watch and learn, and then Lucille can practice it on Broad, because if he doesn't know what he's doing, he will end up hurt or dead. Lucille realizes this is pretty much learning from experience, as he did as an office worker in his previous life. The shocking part about this is that Broad tells him that's enough rest and they will begin the second training round. After almost passing out from exhaustion, Broad decides to call it for a day. Lucille then thinks about casting heal on himself to recover from the injuries and fatigue, but Broad forbids it. He explains that he will learn a skill that increases his physical recovery if he lets his body heal naturally. He tells Lucille to only heal himself if he's really injured. Lucille understands it and notices that they were the only ones training over there. Broad mentions that it's because they have a few newbie adventurers. Plus, they don't have the money to train, so they use real battles to improve. Lucille remembers that was the case with the beastman he tried to heal a week ago. Plus, he doesn't know if his healing skills will help him recover right now, so he wants to save his mana to save adventurers instead. Broad is impressed by those words and tells Lucille to promise that he will heal anyone who needs it, regardless of their race. Suddenly, a few injured adventurers appear in the training hall. One of them asks if Lucille will really heal them for free. The injured girl wants to go back, thinking this is just a scam, but Lucille runs toward them, asking what happened to them. He checks the girl's injuries and prepares to heal her. She cannot believe he will do it, but he starts chanting his spell. The girl doesn't believe that a healer just helped her, making Lucille realize that people don't trust healers in their town. he heals the remaining party members. And Broad tells him that he will soon become busy healing the injured adventurers. Lucille then explains that right now he can only use his healing skill 8 times in a row and asks if that's enough. Broad thinks that's enough, but recommends Lucille to practice his healing skill until he's almost out of energy. That way his body will naturally adapt and become stronger. Lucille decides to trust him, but is shocked to find out that the real training hasn't started yet. He still needs to build his strength. He decides on his new training method first. He will train his martial arts skills, then he will heal people to improve his holy magic affinity, and finally meditate to increase his magic and physical recovery. He realizes that staying around Broad will give him great results. Broad, on the other hand, tells Lucille that he should live at the guild to make his training more progressive. He will get a room for free and 3 meals a day. Lucille thinks this is too good to be true and asks about the catch. Broad explains that he wants to keep Lucille's healing skills around to increase the survival rate of inexperienced adventurers. Lucille remembers the group from 1 week ago and tells Broad that he wants to save as many lives as he can. Broad feels moved and tells that the world would be a better place if there were more healers like him. Lucille doesn't understand those words, but now feels that he can finally start a new life in this world. That brings the episode to an end.